Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the biggest collaboration effort in Jurassic World Evolution 2 history, Unity Park, where 6 of us elite builders have come together to create something truly amazing and historic. So, with that said, there are 6 of us builders, including myself, Legion, Cesar Creates, crazycatmyri, Jurassic Tom, and Montgomery Rex. I'm sure you've all heard of all of these different content creators, but if not, I highly encourage you to check them out as they are insanely amazing builders, and I'm truly excited to be a part of this awesome team, and I think we're going to really create something spectacular for you guys. So with that said, I'm going to be showing you my initial reaction to Jurassic Tom's build. He was up last, and then I will be doing my build in just a little while. I've got some ideas about what I want to do. We'll see how it goes and stick around for that. So with all that said, why don't we go ahead and jump in to Tommy's build. So Jurassic Tom is an incredible builder, like I said. He creates all sorts of truly unique and interesting content. Things like Egypt or Atlantis, just absolutely insane amounts of decorations and just a really unique style, like truly awesome. So Legion was the one that started us off. I know he built the park entrance. I've seen a little bit of it, and then second up was Cesar Creates. I saw a little bit of Cesar stuff too. He created a little lake, and then crazycatmyri was up before Tommy, and she made a mountain of sorts. So, oh wow, this is interesting. It's nighttime. I was not expecting that, so that'll be interesting. So yeah, like I was saying, Cesar created the lake with the aviary. Absolutely amazing content. Like I love the whole look and feel of this. You're a guest. You're over here, coming from the park entrance. I guess we should have started there, but oh well, this is where I loaded in. So anyway, you come up to this spot and you're just looking out over this gorgeous pond with the mountains in the background and the aviary. And that's the cool thing about Cesar's builds. He really creates eye-catching stuff, and he knows how to grab your attention. So as you're going down this, as you get to this point, you see this aviary in the distance, and that makes you want to go down this path to go and see what the heck is going on over here. So absolutely amazing work. Alright, let's get back over here. We really should have started with Legion because he started us off and he made the park entrance. And this is the first place, the first stop that you're going to have. So he did a really cool job, a really amazing work with the monorails, really cool architecture, and the visitor center right in the middle here. I love the water around it and all the shrubbery and the plants. It makes it nice and lush and green. And that's just a really cool view as you're coming in. I just noticed this. I absolutely love this little monument here and garden. The rocks, the different color rocks with the skeleton in the middle, the fossil in the middle, and then the shrubberies around it. So, absolutely incredible work. And I love this too. This stuff. Putting these little gardens and these little trees in the pathways, it's awesome. I think one of the things that I really love about a lot of the stuff that Legion's been doing are these little clusters of trees in his enclosures with the rocks, and it's really tight knit. It just, I don't know, to me it looks really realistic and really awesome, and this is the kind of stuff that I really love. Alrighty, let's go back to here. So we'll catch back up with Cesar just a little bit. So Cesar really creates very authentic and like realistic zoo type builds. It's truly amazing. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. So if you were a guest and you were coming down this main pathway, if you wanted to see this enclosure, you could come off into this little outcropping. And that's really nice because it helps keep the flow of traffic so people aren't stopping looking at the dinosaurs. If they want to look at the dinosaurs, they got to stop off here. And that's really neat. I think a lot of zoos and a lot of places like that do that. And Caesar's plays a lot of Planet Zoo, and he's been to a lot of zoos, so that's awesome stuff. All right, let's take a look at Myri's build. So Myri made this insanely huge and insanely awesome mountain. I love the little like plazas and plateaus. You get all these cool little areas where like guests can stop and just, you know, take in the view and the scenery. Like that's truly insanely amazing. Like look at that. You're looking out over this water at the aviary with the forest and the mountains in the background. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. So she did say there was still a little bit of work left to do. Obviously, these paths are just placeholders, but the things that she was able to finish and create, truly awesome. Like I think one of my favorite things is a monorail, honestly. Like if I was a guest visiting this park, I would be super excited to take this monorail and just have it loop around and come up to the top, because that would be a really fun ride and you would just be soaking up just absolutely gorgeous views. And then you get a nice little plaza up here at the top. You get the innovation center and some shops and things like that. So truly awesome content. I think one of the other things that I really love about some of the stuff Myri's done is, and one of the things that I'm really excited about being a part of this team is just being able to learn from these other individuals. Like I think my specialties really lie in guest areas and facility areas, and you know, I think I'm definitely known for making like parking lots and roads and stuff like that. I'm not very good at enclosures, I'll be honest. Like I feel like my enclosures are usually kind of just, you know, run-of-the-mill, ordinary, nothing super extravagant. I might have like one or two truly awesome enclosures, but you know, these guys are just pumping out enclosures left and right that just look awesome and realistic. And the thing that I love about this one is the two different viewing sections. You get some gorgeous views. I mean, just look at that. Let's take a look. I mean, this just looks so authentic and real, and it just looks like a nice habitat for these Albertosauruses. And then you come down the path. There's a little cutout where you have a see-through fence. That's pretty neat. Same thing over here. And then another viewing vent where you can see another angle of the enclosure. Absolutely awesome work. I love the content here. Alright, we should probably get to Tommy's build, because he's the one I was really supposed to be taking a look at. And okay, this has got to be him. This is... wow. Okay, this is insane. I don't know even what to say. This is a megaton of lights. This must have taken forever. So essentially what he's done is he's placed down, I guess, like 1,000 or more of these little lanterns and then changed them all green. That's really cool. I guess that's why we loaded in the nighttime. It kind of makes sense now. So I guess he's going for some sort of bioluminescent feel, because we got some bioluminescent dinos in here. We got a Sinoceratops and the bioluminescent paras, so that's pretty neat. I like that. I really like this feel. Like this is what I'm talking about. Like Tommy is really known for creating truly unique stuff. Like I would not have expected this in the slightest. This is absolutely insane and truly awesome. Alright, so we got some red over here. This has got to be... I bet there's carnivores in here. Yep. Well, we got some Allosauruses. Monty's going to be... I probably have something to say about that. I know Monty loves the Allosaurus, so maybe we'll get a couple of... or a different enclosure with some Allos. Oh, we got some other dinos in here too. What we got here? Monolophosaurus. Okay. I like the Monolophosaurus. I've never put them in one of my builds, but I've always kind of wanted to. These guys look really cool. Like, I love the little crest on the nose, and yeah, they're pretty neat. Let's see, does he have any other dinos in here? Let's take a look. Man, look at all these lights. This must have taken forever. I mean, this is insane. And I really love the feel. So over here, he clearly used some of the biosyn lanterns as well. So we get the tiny little ones, and then the taller ones mixed in with the trees. I think that's really cool. That's a good technique right there. They're taller, so that helps light up the trees a little bit better. Again, a bioluminescent feel. Oh, here we go. Spinoraptors. Yep. Look at that glow. Like, that's insane. So, absolutely amazing work. I love this content. Cool little plaza here. Again, I like the feel. So half of it's for the herbivores, half of it's for the carnivores. And yeah, that's awesome work. Amazing job. We got a little cutout here so we can expand out if we wanted to. And we got another cutout over here. So I like the attention to detail here too. So in this one we have the Jurassic Tour, which I think is definitely more suited for less dangerous species. And clearly he planned for that, because we've got these guys in these nice open vehicles, because herbivores probably aren't going to bother the vehicles nearly as much. And then over here we have the gyrospheres. So, makes sense because the gyrosphere is a glass ball, more enclosed and encased. Probably a safer ride for the guests than a tour. And I like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I love including tour rides as well. I don't think they get used as often as they should. I include them in pretty much every one of my builds because I love having... We don't have a lot of attractions, and you know, I want to make use of the attractions that we do have, and I think beyond just that, they're just an awesome ride. And I really love the route that he did here. That's pretty neat, like up along the river. And then this one runs along both sides of the river, so that's pretty cool. Alrighty, well, awesome work, Jurassic Tom. Truly outstanding. This is incredible and must have taken forever. So, alrighty, well, with that said, I think I'm going to jump into my build now, and then we'll go from there. So I'll catch you guys in a minute. Thanks. Welcome back, guys. So, quick heads up, this video is going to be a little bit on the longer side. As I was going through the editing process, my initial reaction piece was a little bit longer than I had anticipated, but I was totally good with that because I wanted to make sure that I covered each of the builds in detail, and I was excited to go over that. And then my section, as I finished it up, I realized it ended up taking me about 12.5 hours, so it was a really long project. And I've managed to condense it down into about 30 minutes. I've really only left in the pieces that I wanted to touch on, that, you know, that I thought I could provide some commentary on. And with that said, the format of this video is going to be a little bit different than, you know, my standard format. Typically, I'll kind of give a brief intro, talk about, you know, what I want to do, what are my plans, and kind of go from there. Maybe then do a little bit of commentary on the back end. But this time I thought I would just, you know, record the whole section and then provide commentary through the whole video and just kind of go over some of my thought processes or whatever as we're watching this together. So with all that said, as I loaded into the game, I was really stunned by the awesome work that had been done so far. And I think in my initial reaction I had said something along the lines of, you know, my strengths are really more in the guest areas and facilities and things like that. And so as I was looking at the build, you know, I was like, I think we're missing something here. And that something is Mainstreet and facilities. So I was like, I think I'm going to try to tackle Mainstreet because there's a nice big open space right near the park entrance, and that's typically where I would want to do Mainstreet in general. You know, I like to make sure that it's really close to the park entrance because that's where you're going to want to have a lot of shops and restaurants and activities, attractions, things like that. And so I decided I'd go ahead and jump on this opportunity while it was still there. So my build is going to be Mainstreet, and what I'm working on here is trying to create a water feature. So that's another thing that I really like to do with a lot of my builds, is build out really decorative water features and add in tons of detail. And so essentially what I'm trying to do here is I'm creating this weird circle of sorts. I'm creating these path segments and extending them out, and I'm going to use these as my starting points because it's got all the proper angles. So I wanted to make an oval shaped water feature, little just lagoon or pond or whatever you want to call it. And in order to do that, I needed to create a circle and then be able to get those proper angles. And then once I had those angles, I could then extend out the paths to those segments and then kind of wrap it around as you're seeing done right now. So I kind of realized I was trying to play with the length of the oval to see how big I could make it. So I'm kind of just playing with the extensions here and then trying to drag it out, but it doesn't end up working because I've run into that path near the shops. So I backtrack a little bit and then essentially just recreate that oval piece. So the idea is you get those proper angles and then you extend on the section that's closest to the curve, the hard curve. Those are going to be the longest segments, and then you kind of do a secondary segment that's not as long. So in this case I did 3 segment lengths out and then another 2 from where my starting points were, and then connected them together to make that nice curve. It ended up coming out really nicely. So what I wanted to do here was create 2 of these actually. As I was looking at the build, I had to study the build for probably about 30 minutes to an hour just to figure out how I was going to lay it all out. I originally wanted to do just one really long straight segment, but that wasn't going to work because if I did that, I'd run straight into the Tommy's build. So I had to get a little bit creative here, and I decided, why don't I make another circle as a little plaza in the center. And that's essentially what I'm doing here. I'm using that same technique just to get those proper angles. And then once I have those angles, I'm going to extend it out and go in another direction and create another oval shaped water feature. So I'll have a lot of shops that line up along these features, and then I think it'll look really good. And I think it'll be really exciting. At the end of the second feature is going to be one of the main attractions. I only did one enclosure for this area, and it's going to be, spoiler alert, it's going to end up being the Trex Enclosure. I love the T-Rex. It's my favorite dinosaur. And, it's a little bit cliche, I guess, but I don't care. T-Rex is awesome. So that's what I decided to do. Right now I'm just laying down, some of the buildings, laying down some shops, some restaurants, and then the attractions. I really wish we had more attractions in this game. Maybe in Jurassic World Evolution 3. If we get a Jurassic World Evolution 3, that would be really nice, because that is definitely one thing that we are severely lacking. I mean, it was nice that they added the zip lines a couple of patches ago, probably maybe about a year ago at this point. So that was an excellent addition, but we could definitely use some more attractions. So anyway, with that said, what I'm doing here is I'm lining the paths with the facility path, and that's another building technique that I tend to like to do, is to mix and match the pathing just to add a little bit of extra flavor to the mix. I think it just helps make it look a little bit better. So I'll usually place down the gray pads as my primary pads, and then in the past, in my other builds, I've always used the luxury pads, so I get this nice combination of gray and orange. But the other thing that I wanted to do was kind of match some of the building styles of my fellow builders. and I had noticed that they were using the facility pads, so I decided to match what they were doing and use the facility path. And I like it. It's actually something that I've wanted to do anyway in maybe a future build. I just haven't actually done it, so it worked out really nice, and yeah, I was excited about it. Now, what you're watching right here is this technique that I created to create a perfectly curved intersection. And essentially, I did a tips and tricks video on it, but essentially the idea is creating brand new connection points within a already created path. So you have a straight path and you find a spot that you think would be good to have a curved section come into, and then you make a path segment coming out at a perpendicular angle, and then you delete it, you come in with another path segment, you come as close as you can to that connection point without actually connecting, and then you delete that segment as well, and then there's this tiny little path sliver that you can delete. You delete that, and then the paths are close enough to where it looks like they're connected still, but in actuality, they're not. Now, the game will still function as if they are connected, because the engine just operates that way, but the benefit is you get to create two new path connections that you can then use to connect straight into with a nice curve. And so it's a cool little technique. I've used it a lot in many of my builds now. I think I created it back in San Diego, and I've used it a ton in my Pennsylvania build, and anywhere where I can use it still. Now, what I'm doing here is trying to create some templates for some decorations that I want to place down in the future. A couple of fountains, and then a fossil skeleton. And I mentioned it earlier that that's definitely one of the things that I really like to do, is mix and match different path colors and path segments and things like that. So I love creating little outlines and perimeters for my fountains, and it's really cool that you actually are able to do it super easily with just single path segments. So the smaller fountains, you use the smaller paths, just one segment in each direction, form a circle, and then replace the cross in the middle with whatever different path color you want to use, and then you place the circle down on top of it. It's actually the perfect size, and you get this nice little perimeter in between the fountain wall and your primary path, and it just creates this cool little outline. The larger fountains, you use the larger path, same technique, just one path segment in each direction, replace the middles. You might have to fill in a little bit extra, but it still works the same. You get the same exact distance, and it's great. I love doing it. So at this time, I'm just trying to finish up the second water feature, the framework, the layout, just laying down my primary pads, the gray pads. I will have to come back. I don't think I included it here, but I'll have to come back and fix the path bleeding. I wanted the outline path, the facility path, to be a specific size and distance. You can see over there on the left hand side that it's much smaller than it is on this right hand side, and it's a simple way to fix it. You just replace it with a different color path, and then you just replace that one again back to its original state, and that fixes the layout. Essentially, it's all about path bleeding and understanding which pads are primary pads and on top, and which pads will layer underneath another path. So I think at some point I'll try to do a tips and tricks video on that as well, but I'll have to figure out when I have the time. So you can kind of see the framework really starting to come together. I've got the water down for both water features, and I'm starting to create the plaza in the center where I'm going to place down a nice little garden, and I want to place down a ton of different little picnic tables and chairs and stuff like that. Make it nice and decorative and whatnot. So at this point, I've kind of jumped ahead. I've already started decorating. I've probably placed down all the buildings, and I'm trying to do a technique that I've also used in many of my other builds at this point, and that's creating nice little rock wall retaining walls. I think I've done another video on this in the past, but just to recap, essentially, this is something that I really like doing, even though it's a real pain in the butt. It takes a really long time, but the payoff is definitely well worth it. So essentially, what I'm doing is I have my little medium rock, and I'm placing it down side by side on the waterline edge between the land and the water. And it's intentionally off the wall a little bit because the elevation kind of slopes down a little bit, so you actually get to make sure that these bigger rocks are a little bit flatter and a little bit lower from the main wall. And I just line it all the way around until I come back, and part of the reason why it's such a pain is because you have to manipulate the rotation of the rocks frequently, because sometimes the rocks will just be sticking straight up in the air, and I don't want that, because the whole idea is it's supposed to be kind of a flat, level retaining wall that's not going to obstruct the view for any of the guests. Once I have done that, you can see I've already gotten started, where I come back behind that and I just start laying down tons of little rocks as filler rocks in between the wall and the larger rocks. Kind of make it look a little bit more realistic and authentic. Same process, just going all the way around. You don't really have to worry about the rotation on the height side. Like they're not really big enough to stick up too high to where they're obstructing the view. The problem is, though, you have to rotate it to get them to fit in the slots and fill the gaps. Now, it's kind of a three-pronged process, and we've now moved on to step 3, where you start off with the big rocks, get your nice large perimeter, come back, get your smaller perimeter in between the wall and the rocks, the bigger rocks, and then you finish it off by laying down another set of smaller rocks on the water side in between. I like to do it in between the cracks of all the medium rocks, as you can see, and it just helps create this extra little realistic feel. Kind of helps fill the gaps and kind of makes it seem like the water wouldn't be able to get through. Plus it just helps, I really feel like it helps make it feel more realistic. So this is definitely something that I really like doing. The only problem is it really does take a long time. But like I said, the payoff is definitely well worth it. So with that said, I've now moved back to decorating the plaza. And I'm just laying down a bunch of trees. I didn't want to lay down trees in every single box because I think I actually did try that and it didn't look right. So I went back, I deleted them, and just started over and just did every other box. And I think it looked a lot better. So you don't want it to be too full. And besides, I can place down other directions. I think I ended up placing down, little flags or banners or something like that. So another one of the things that I wanted to do is match the building styles. I said it earlier, match the building styles of my fellow builders. And this was a technique that I think Legion had used. So he used it in the park entrance, and so I just kind of mimicked it using the orange rocks, the desert rocks, and then filling in the space with, you see I went and looked at one of his plants, little gardens at the entrance, make sure I was matching it right, and then essentially just filling in the space with the shrubs, the tropical shrubs, and then coming back, deleting some of those and filling in those holes with the little flowers or bushes or whatever I want. It's kind of a similar technique that I have used with my flower beds, my custom flower beds. And I think he might have gotten the inspiration for that from me, so that was pretty cool. But now I'm getting inspiration from him using a similar technique. So yeah, I think it works out really nice. It looks awesome, and I was really pleased with the outcome. Once I get done placing all the flower beds, I'm going to start placing down a bunch of picnic tables. And this is a technique that I think is actually fairly unique to me, is I really like to mix and match the open umbrellas and the closed umbrellas. And not only just that, but then using the closed umbrella tables and making them face each other. So you actually get larger tables. You see, I'm able to get a couple of larger set tables in there, and I think it looks really cool. Plus, I feel like it's probably a little bit more realistic that not every single table the umbrellas are going to be open. Maybe that's incorrect, but I don't know. I feel like it just looks a little better. Like when I see a series of tables where all the umbrellas are open, I don't know, from an aerial view, it just doesn't look right. So I really usually just mix and match. Yep, like I said, I placed down a bunch of flags in those other spots, and I've moved back to my custom flower beds, and this is definitely a unique building style of mine. I created this in my Pennsylvania series, or in my San Diego series, and then I've used it in my Pennsylvania series as well. I did a whole video on how to create these, but essentially you start with the square fountains, use those as your end segments on each side, and then you use the little concrete walls to create the barrier. I usually like doing 3 or 4 segments, and then I'll do a lantern, and then 3 or more, and then etc. all the way until it gets to the end point. Once you've got your box, you then fill in the space with the tropical plants, those little bushes, and then once you've done the full length, I like going back and then deleting different plants here and there, and then filling those holes in with trees or flowers. I like doing that because it helps create the framework, and so you know that when you go and you delete it, it's a good size and it will fit a flower or something like that. So yeah, I've now moved back to the plaza. I'm just trying to create another little garden with a monument, again matching the similar building style with Legion. Legion's really come a long way, and he's pumping out tons of great content. It's really exciting. So I was just kind of mimicking his style that he had done in the entrance. Again, the desert rocks, and then I'll fill this in with the plants. Actually, I think I'll place down the skeleton first, and then I'll come back and lay down the plants. Yep, just like I thought. So skeleton, then fill in the perimeter with more of those tropical plants. They really are the best bushes for this kind of stuff. They're not too tall, they're nice and lush and green, and you know, they just really help create a little garden. And then the tropical flowers are also spot on because they have the nice little red and yellow in there, and again, just the perfect size. Unfortunately, we just don't have a lot of options, so these tropical ones really do work out the best. But this was another technique that I kind of took from Legion. I haven't really done this with my stuff yet, but I figured I'd go ahead and give it a shot here, and it actually worked out really well. I was pleased. So especially if you do it kind of on the inner part of the garden, where you basically take those little potted plants and you fill in the holes with those potted plants. You get a little bit of extra variety. You see I'm able to add some white flowers and maybe some more green flowers and things like that. And then at the ground level view, you actually can't really see the pots. So it works out perfectly, and it adds a little bit of extra flavor to it, which I really like. Again, Legion's technique, he came up with that, so great stuff. I've now moved on to working on the framework and essentially the whole enclosure for the T-Rexes. And on this piece, I pulled inspiration from both myself and again from Legion. So I made a circular T-Rex enclosure in my Nublar 1993 build, and I've always really loved that kind of technique. I've wanted to actually maybe recreate something like that again, and I thought this might be a good opportunity. So I also took inspiration though from Legion and I think it was his Pyroraptor enclosure in his Evergreen Park. So essentially what he did was the same technique where he created a circular enclosure and made a hill, and then put down the log viewing gallery at the top of the hill, kind of looking down over the lower section of the enclosure. So you get a nice view of the lower part, and then on the flip side, you can still see the upper level section from the other side of the viewing gallery. And I thought it was a really cool technique. I really loved it, and so I wanted to kind of try to mimic it a little bit here and do something very similar. So I'm just filling in the space. I didn't want to just do pine trees. So I filled in, I think it's the temperate trees, and they're a little bit more lush, they're greener, stuff like that. I also wanted to make sure that I created a little, essentially a rock ledge, like a perimeter ledge, so that the T-Rexes, this is supposed to be like a steeper incline hill, essentially not something that they could walk up or climb up. And if they were at the top, these rocks would act as a little barrier to prevent them from falling down the edge or whatever if they got too close. So a little bit of a fence, as it were, and just kind of lining the top, again mixing and matching the large rocks, same kind of technique as I've used with my water features. Start off with the large rocks, then come back, fill in the gaps with some smaller or medium rocks, and then after that come back again and fill in even more gaps and holes with the smaller rocks. And it just really helps create this really realistic and authentic feel. Makes it seem like this is an actual natural rock wall ledge as opposed to something artificial. So I really like the way it turns out, and I'll probably use this technique again in the future, this kind of enclosure type situation. And again, I think I mentioned it in the reaction piece. I really enjoy this aspect of this build, you know, being able to come together and gain inspiration from these other amazing builders and just see what they can come up with. I felt like this definitely helped improve my enclosure game a little bit, because that is definitely the area that I'm not very strong at. So this is a technique that I have definitely used a lot, and I really love doing this. So basically what I'm trying to do is just create a nice little perimeter around the water source and create basically a pool for the dinosaurs. I feel like this is something that you might see in some zoos or some maybe higher level exhibits, where you get this nice little natural feeling with the water sources. Again, just using the same technique with rocks, filling in the gaps with small and medium rocks, and it really creates a nice little enclosure for the water. After that, I just kind of put some trees down around it, finish it out, and call it a day. Up here at the top though, I wanted to add in some decorations for my facilities guys. You know, I think doing like fenceless enclosures is something that I think is really nice and really cool, and something that I've wanted to do, but my biggest holdup is the fact that I can't put down gates. And that to me is just something that I really like with my builds. I feel like it's really necessary, because again, I'm kind of going for realism, and I just need to be able to know how the ranger teams are going to get to the dinos when they're sick or they need treatment or whatever the case may be. So that's what I've done here. I wanted to create a double gated system, add an extra layer of security for my ranger teams, so that way, you know, the gate's not open to the outside world for the T-Rexes to just get out of. And then at the top of the hill, it kind of wraps around the outer edge of the enclosure, you know, circling up the hill until you get to the top. And then at the top of the hill, I've got some supplies and stuff like that. I put down a little bunker as a kind of like a, it's supposed to be like a little electricity outpost, whatever, things like that. And then essentially I just come back and line the wall with a lot of lanterns to just kind of help light up the pathway for the ranger teams. And that's pretty much it. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit on the longer side, but stick around for just a few more minutes and I'll have some cinematic shots where it really all came together and it looks awesome. So I hope you guys enjoy. We'll catch you in the next one, and make sure to check out Monty's build. He's going to be up next. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you next time.